So the Patriots did sign Marquise Lee, as I mentioned. They showed interest in him before the 2014 NFL draft when they wound up taking Dominique Easley. As I just said, I think the Patriots should look at this as somewhat of a net zero as far as the draft goes. They still should be taking a wide receiver in the draft. It's such a loaded draft class. I would probably take a wide receiver in the early rounds and then probably in the mid to late rounds as well, as far as this Marquise Lee signing goes. And I don't know, I personally probably wouldn't have high hopes for Marquise Lee on the Patriots roster. He had a lot of knee injuries over the last couple years, hasn't played even close to a full season since 2017, hasn't played a full season, I think, since 2016. So anything that the Patriots get out of him would be a bonus, essentially. You could very easily compare this to a lot of the veteran signings that they've made in the past that didn't work out so well, like Eric Decker and Kenny Britt and Michael Floyd, all of those types of guys. But who knows? Maybe it'll wind up working out like Brandon LaFell or Chris Hogan or some of the veteran wide receivers that they have added that did go a little bit better. But now that some more people have kind of come in here, let's get going with the question and answers portion. I'll start off here probably in the live chat. Patty Cakes asked, who is this year's Joanne Williams for New England, as in the player that they just seem like a guarantee that they'll take? I don't think there is that player this year. I think that, because of the restrictions that have been put in place with pro days and visits and all of that stuff, I don't think that anyone's getting as good of a sense about this year's draft as we might have in the past. I thought that, I guess I should rephrase that. I had a very, very good idea that the Patriots were going to take Dominique Easley in 2014. I had a very, very, very good idea that the Patriots were going to take Joanne Williams last season. I've had, a pretty good idea in the past as far as who the Patriots are going to take. I don't have quite that same sense this season, just based on a number of different factors. But the names that were mentioned to me as far as first-round potential picks for the Patriots, and they're names that you've heard a lot: Oklahoma linebacker Kenneth Murray, Alabama safety Xavier McKinney, and the one that's a little bit of a wild card that I threw out there in my mock today was Notre Dame tight end Cole Kmet. I think that that's on the board as an option for the Patriots in the draft this year to take Cole Kmet in the first round. I'm not saying that I know that's going to happen. Like I just said, I don't have as good of a sense about this year's draft as I have in the past, but I do think that's on the board. And then as far as if the Patriots do trade down, if they pick up a second-round pick, these players probably wouldn't be available in the third round. But the two names I heard were Wisconsin linebacker/edge defender Zach Bond and Michigan linebacker/edge defender Josh Uche. I know that you guys probably didn't hear a lot about Josh Uche leading up to the draft, and part of that reason is just based on the fact that he didn't test at the combine, but he's one of the most athletic linebackers/edge defenders in this class. He's a little bit undersized at 6'1", but he weighs 245 pounds. He's got very long arms for his height, though. They're almost 34 inches. So I think that despite his height, I think the Patriots could still potentially use him as an edge defender/linebacker, bring him in and see what he can do. But as I said, that's probably more of a second-round option than a first-round option. Does Marquise Lee's affect the Patriots draft plans at all for wide receiver? I would say no on that one. I just sort of mentioned that I would still take a wide receiver. I think that anything the Patriots get out of Marquise Lee is a bonus. Very random, but have you heard of Jordan Fuller, defensive back out of Ohio State? Any opinion on draft stock? I don't think I've heard of him. If he was invited to the combine, then I've probably come across his name. But beyond that, no. That's the best answer that I can give right now. I was going to try to find him real quick on this handy dandy. Here's the spreadsheet. All right, so he's a safety out of Ohio State, 4.67 40-yard dash, 4.27 short shuttle. He doesn't really hit a lot of the Patriots' typical metrics as far as safeties go. A little bit slower than usual, but the Patriots did take Jordan Richards. I know that's not a name that you guys really want to hear right now, but they did take Jordan Richards in the second round, and he ran like a 4.6 40, so it's at least on the table. Pete Traeger mocked today DeAndre Swift to the Patriots in the first round. What's more likely, an OBJ trade or that? Patriots fans are going to riot if the Patriots take a running back in the first round. It seems like Schrager's mock draft picks for the Patriots have been a little bit all over the board. I think he had them taking Jeremy Chin, and then I think that he was the one who had Harrison Bryant to the Patriots as well. So it seems like he's just, I mean, I don't know what his methodology goes. Maybe he's got great sources within the Patriots organization, but it does seem to some degree that he's throwing darts a little bit because the Patriots usually do go off the board there. I think it would be a bad pick for the Patriots to take DeAndre Swift after taking Sony Michel, 2 years ago. They don't even know what they have in Damian Harris yet at this point. So that would be a pretty crazy trade for them to make, or a pretty crazy draft pick for them to make. Doug, do you see Pats taking a kicker like Blankenship or Bass in later rounds of the draft? I am on the record as saying I think the Patriots will take a kicker in the 4th or 5th round. I think the top options are Sam Sloman out of Miami of Ohio and Rodrigo Blankenship out of Georgia, just based on essentially their numbers. And I'm no kicking expert. I can't assess their motion and all of these things, but based on Stephen Gostkowski's numbers as a senior at Memphis, and now based on Sloman and Blankenship's numbers in college, I think the Patriots would probably want to take a big-legged kicker who also has been accurate during his career. Obviously, that's what you want out of a kicker, but there are some guys in this class who were accurate but didn't have very big legs, or maybe a guy like Chase Vinatieri who wasn't very accurate, but I think he had like a 57-yard field goal. I think that Sam Sloman and Rodrigo Blankenship sort of do both of those things. What position group do you think gets taken first by the Pats? I'm thinking edge. It's a really good question. I mean, the best bet would be a front 7 player, whether that is a linebacker or an edge defender. But I do think there's a possibility that's a pass catcher, whether that's a wide receiver or a tight end. Cole Kmet would probably be the pick if it was a tight end. I'm not quite sure as far as a wide receiver goes. One name to look out for as far as wide receiver goes is Brian Edwards out of South Carolina. Seems like there's been some pretty recent buzz about Brian Edwards. He's another guy who I don't believe he tested at the combine. So those are the players that I just don't have as good of a sense about as far as their fit with the Patriots goes. But he's a big wide receiver. The knock on him, and Patriots fans aren't going to want to hear this, is that he couldn't get a ton of separation at South Carolina. But I had also heard that, some within that organization really liked him. So I'm not sure how that goes for the Patriots, but he was well thought of at South Carolina. What do you think we can get for our first this year if we trade down? There's a number of different options: late first, late second, 2 seconds, early second, early third. And then if you throw Joe Thuney into the mix, then that changes things as well. In my mock today, I had the Patriots trading number 23 Joe Thuney and number 100 for the Dolphins' first-round pick, one of their second-round picks, and a third-round pick. So, I mean, if I were making a trade, that's probably one that I would try to do, is try to possibly include Joe Thuney if the Patriots don't think that they can reach a long-term agreement with him, just to get the most draft capital possible. Michael Capola asks, who do you think is a better tight end fit, Troutman or Kmet? Personally, I might go with Troutman just because he's a little bit of a better blocker than Cole Kmet, but Kmet's got the better size and he's got the better pure speed. I think that Adam Troutman tested better overall. Troutman only ran a 4.8, but he had the 6.7, 6.3 cone, 4.27 short shuttle, decent vertical and broad jump, and that was at 6'5", 255, whereas Cole Kmet, where is he? He's right below him, 6'6", 262, and ran a 4.7. So personally, I look at all of the testing numbers, and I'd probably weight them 43 cone short shuttle. A lot of teams purely base things on size, speed, and that would be, height, weight, and then pure speed. I think the Patriots do put an emphasis on the agility drills, and that's 3 cone and short shuttle. But when it all boils down to it, straight line speed is important. And Cole Kmet has Adam Troutman beat by, what is that, a tenth of a second. So that might be what makes it him a more appealing option. That plus the fact that he is a bigger target. What do we got here? Do Pats fans riot if we pick a defensive back in round 2, assuming they make a pick there via trade? They probably will. I wouldn't hate that if it's a safety. If it's cornerback, then Patriots fans can ride all they want. But there are some appealing options at safety, especially in the second round, especially when you consider the fact that the Patriots are getting significantly older at the safety position. Devin McCourty, Patrick Chung. And I can say that because I'm the same age as those guys. So I can call them old because I'm also 33 years old. But if they took someone like Jeremy Chin in the second round, I don't think Patriots fans would mind that at all. If they took Ashton Davis, who's a Daron Harmon type replacement, rangy free safety, I don't think they would have a reason to hate that at all. But if you're talking about a cornerback or a safety kind of going off the board a little bit, then yeah, I think that they do riot quite a bit there. Let's look at some of these Twitter questions, then I'll get back to the chat here. Your Cole Kmet report in the mock draft today, how set in stone do you see that pick being? Not very set in stone. That comes from Dave Latham. Like I said earlier, I got a sense of 3 potential first-round picks, a couple of potential mid-round picks. So Cole Kmet was in that mix, and like I said, I certainly would not be shocked if the Patriots did wind up taking Cole Kmet there. We got some weird questions in here, it looks like. But with all the uncertainty around COVID, could affect the upcoming season. Would this be a good year to trade current draft picks for future draft picks? I know that some people have mentioned that. Yeah, I think that it's certainly a possibility, but I would still certainly add to this year's roster because, that player might not contribute as much this season just because of all the restrictions that are around because of the pandemic. But you'd still be getting a second-year jump out of those players in 2021. And oftentimes, a player is going to be much better in his second season than he is in his rookie season. So even if they have to carry some redshirt players, then if they think they're grabbing a talented player, then they get a full year with them for them to contribute in 2021. Are there any QBs that you have seen that could go be UDFA options for the Pats? I like Mason Fine a lot, but I'm not sure he fits the Patriots profile at QB. One guy is the Ohio quarterback, Nathan Rourke, I think his name is. Let me just try to bring up his stats real quick. I believe he's Canadian, actually. So he's, Chase Claypool, my guy, the wide receiver out of Notre Dame, also Canadian. So Nathan Rourke had a very productive season last season. Almost 3,000 yards, 20 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, 61% completion percentage. And then he also ran for 867 yards with 13 touchdowns. He had 49 touchdowns in 3 seasons at Ohio, 2,600 yards. He didn't test, unfortunately, because of the pro day cancellation. So say Nathan Rourke, given these stats that he has, if he had ran a 4.4 like Taysom Hill did when he was coming out of college, I think Nathan Rourke would be a potential, mid to late round pick in this draft just based on what people have seen Taysom Hill do in the NFL. And those rushing numbers, those don't come by mistake, even in the MAC. Having 2,600 yards, 49 touchdowns, he had 4 receptions, 38 yards, 2 more touchdowns. I could see him getting drafted. If not, I would take a chance on that guy as an undrafted free agent. What are the chances the Pats don't take a quarterback this year? Take the year to see what they have instead of him if the year is bad. I think they'll take a quarterback regardless, just because they only have 2 quarterbacks on their roster right now. I suppose they could go the UDFA route like we were just talking about with someone like Nathan Rourke or someone else. Tyler Huntley might be a UDFA choice. But I do think that they wind up taking their quarterback just because I think there's some sense, and I'll use the Washington Redskins as an example here, even though it's imperfect. They took Robert Griffin III in the first round, then they took Kirk Cousins in the 4th round. A lot of people kind of laughed at that. And ultimately, obviously, they didn't win a Super Bowl or have that much success. But when Robert Griffin III fizzled out because of injuries, they still had Kirk Cousins. So I think that it does make sense to take multiple swings at the quarterback position. So they took a swing last year with Jarrett Stidham. I like Jarrett Stidham. I think he'll be a pretty good quarterback. But if he's not, then you might as well have someone waiting in the wings to step up who's not a veteran option like Brian Hoyer. Does this picture look like a great ad for erectile dysfunction? Yeah, it kind of does, actually. If Kinlaw slips, do you think the Pats would consider trading up for him? Yeah, maybe. I think that he would be one of the better trade-up options in this draft. Just given his size and athleticism and everything, he's like 6'6", 330. He could be that kind of Richard Seymour type body for the Patriots. The Stephon Tuitt type. The Patriots haven't taken a player like that in quite a while. But if he starts to slip, which I could see that happening with all the quarterbacks and offensive tackles and wide receivers and offense, with everything else and defensive backs in this draft, I could potentially see a player like Kinlaw slipping just because of the injury issues that he's had. So yeah, I would consider him a possible trade-up option. Let's see what else we got here. Jonathan Desmond asks, what 3 or 4 realistic players do the Pats have to come away with? One, to have Pats be happy/excited, make sure all holes are filled, feel like the draft was a win. I don't know. I mean, I think that kind of depends on how Patriots fans feel. I know that a lot of people weren't happy with the idea of a Cole Kmet first-round pick, but say they came away with Kenneth Murray in the first round, in their mid-third, grab a tight end, maybe someone like Adam Troutman. Late in the third, grab a quarterback like Jake Fromm. And then late in the third, maybe grab a safety like Kayvon Wallace or something. I think that's semi-realistic, and I don't think Patriots fans would have a massive problem with that. Maybe throw a wide receiver in the mix there instead. Lynn Bowden would be an option in the third round. Brian Edwards out of South Carolina. I think the Patriots will probably go off the board with at least one of their picks, but yeah, we'll see. Think Pats double dip at tight end. I really want to see Thad Moss as a Pat. I think there's a strong chance that they do with only 2 tight ends on the roster. At the very least, I think they'll draft a quarterback or draft a tight end and then also pick one up as a UDFA. But with those late round picks, I think that they will probably double dip at some point at tight end. Who's your daddy? I think I'm actually the daddy now, since I'm a father, but otherwise Lance Kide is my father. Chances Pats fans stay up for nothing because the Pats trade back tonight. I don't know, like 45%. Should we be happy or sad with Jordan Love? Somewhere in the middle. I'm not the biggest Jordan Love guy, just because I think it's somewhat of a risk. But to give him credit, and let's just pull up his stats while we're all here, just so I can get this exact. All right, so Utah State. They were good in 2018. I think they won like 10 or 11 games. Threw for 32 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. Very good season. Last season, they weren't good. They lost a lot of players, and Jordan Love's stats tailed off, and it seemed like, I'm not sure if it was frustration or if he was just basically just trying to do too much on every play, but he was definitely taking a lot of risks that he probably shouldn't have been taking last season. So if the Patriots did draft him in the first round, they would be hoping to get the 2018 version rather than the 2019 version. And I do think that's possible. I think that people are getting enamored with Jordan Love because just like if you look at Jordan Love on a football field, he just sort of looks like Patrick Mahomes. They have like the same body type. They do some of the same types of things where they're throwing flat-footed, throwing on the move. So I think that that's where this Jordan Love hype started. But I do think that he's got potential as a quarterback. I think there would be a risk there taking him in the first round with other needs on this roster. But I'm warming up to the idea. All right. Players that you see the Patriots trading up to pick. Javon Kinlaw was one that I said. Maybe a quarterback. Other than that, I probably wouldn't trade up for a wide receiver. If one of the offensive tackles starts falling, then maybe that guy. But I don't really see that happening. So let's get back to some of the chat questions that are in here. All right. Where did I leave off? Thoughts on how Chase Claypool would fit in with the Patriots, more of a wide receiver or tight end prospect? I think he would be more of a wide receiver in the Patriots offense. And Bill Belichick has sort of described these types of players as big wide receivers. And I think that that would probably be what he is. I like the Chase Claypool idea because he also has special teams value. And we all know how much Bill Belichick likes that. And it's not only that, he had 1,000 yards and 13 touchdowns last season with Notre Dame. And he runs an incredibly fast 40-yard dash at great size. It would almost be like taking Brandon King if he was also a starting caliber linebacker. And that's sort of the way that I look at Chase Claypool. So if he's available in the second or third round, I would definitely grab him. If Jordan Love is there at 23, do they draft him or do they trade down for extra picks? Guess it depends on what the offer was. I think that, if Jordan Love falls to that point, then obviously he's not that highly regarded because some team would have traded up for him before that point. So that's tough to say. I'm actually not sure what the Patriots would do in that situation. I think that they could draft Jordan Love. I guess I would just leave it at that. Do Pats trade for a current NFL player by the end of the draft? I'll go with yes on that one. I'll say a higher probability of yes, just given some of the trades that they've made in the past with, who was it, James O'Shaughnessy and Trent Brown. I could definitely see them making some sort of move here. Thoughts on Devin Aussie as tight end in the 3rd or 5th round? He's a decent fit. I'll show his measurables right here. I think he's a okay blocker, decently athletic option. He's 6'3", 257, good size, 4.73 40-yard dash. Didn't do the 3-cone or short shuttle. Oh, no, I'm looking at Chase Claypool. 30.5-inch vert, 115-inch broad jump. Not the best fit, but he's a decent fit as far as tight ends go in this draft for the Patriots. How much do you think the Pats will look into adding O-line help and draft with Froholt and Cajuste in the mix too? I think in my mock draft I had a 3rd and 4th rounder being used on offensive linemen. I could see that being higher. I couldn't see them taking an offensive lineman much lower than that. I think that they just like adding to that mix and not knowing what they have in Yelda Froholt and Yodny Cajuste definitely makes a difference. And if they trade Joe Thuney, then I think it's almost a sure thing that they would take an offensive lineman in 3rd round at the latest, I would say at that point. Just while everyone's here, obviously, make sure to subscribe to my channel as well. Want to get those subscriptions up. You can like this video if you want, but definitely want to get those subs up as much as possible. If the Pats do draft a QB early, how likely would they even start this season? They might not. Brian Hoyer or Jarrett Stidham could still wind up starting, and then that competition could sort of go on through the season or, into next season. But yeah, I think that, there's no guarantee that, say, Jordan Love's drafted in the 1st round, that he would start over Stidham or Brian Hoyer. Leon asks, do you think the Patriots trade for O.J. Howard? As Jason Lockenforth said, they are still wanting him. Here's the deal on that. Michael Lombardi knows the Patriots pretty well. He worked for them. His son is a coach on the staff. He worked with Bill Belichick in Cleveland. He said that the Gronk trade showed that the Patriots value a 4th-round pick over O.J. Howard. And Jason Lockenfora is, I would just say that I would trust Michael Lombardi on this regard more than Jason Lockenfora. We'll see if it happens. I'm not personally ruling anything one way or the other. I haven't specifically heard anything. But the fact that O.J. Howard has been available for as long as he has, and the fact that the Patriots haven't made a move, and the fact that they made a trade with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and didn't come away with O.J. Howard, I think the chances are pretty slim at this point that O.J. Howard comes to the Patriots, but we'll see. Opinion on the comparison between Jordan Love and Jarrett Stidham. I think they're somewhat similar. And see, I asked someone about this at the NFL Scouting Combine, and even before that, do you think that Jarrett Stidham is an obviously worse quarterback than Jordan Love or Jacob Eason? And the answer was no. And the answer from one person was definitely not after watching Jordan Love at the Senior Bowl. So that's where my hesitation would come with taking someone like Jordan Love in the 1st round or Jacob Eason in the 2nd round if you don't know for a fact that they're better than Jarrett Stidham. I would have no problem taking a quarterback that you don't know that about in the 3rd round because the Patriots have 3 3rd-round picks and 2 4th-round picks. But if you're using a 1st-round pick on someone who might not be better than Jarrett Stidham, I don't know. John just asks, Tua. That's another one where Michael Lombardi seems to think the Patriots could only... He said that the Patriots' highest grade on Tua would be a 62 based on his height, the fact that he didn't run a 40, and the medical issues that he has. So I think it's somewhat unlikely the Patriots trade up for Tua Tagovailoa, but we'll see on that one as well. What's your opinion on QB Ben DiNucci? I've never heard of him. What are the odds on the Patriots taking unknown safety in round 2 or 3 plus 450? I would say it's lower than plus 450. That seems to be the Patriots' MO. So it's going to be funny if it happens. We can all laugh about it, right? The NFL draft isn't that serious. What's the first round player that I hate for the Patriots? Not sure if there's one that I hate. I think that the lazy one right now is Iowa's AJ Epinesa. And I'm just not sure if it happens. I think it's too obvious. I don't think he's a good enough athlete. Last season, he was super productive, but I think that he wasn't even starting over some of the other edge defenders that they had. And maybe that's, maybe you blame that on Iowa more than AJ Epinesa. But Anthony Nelson was starting over him, and I'm pretty sure Matt Nelson was as well. So I don't know. I don't know about AJ Epinesa. I wouldn't hate it, but I also don't think that would be the most exciting pick. Pats are taking Ruiz. I think it's certainly possible the Patriots take Michigan center Cesar Ruiz. I think that depends heavily on David Andrews' health, but he's the best center / guard in this draft. So if that was their first round pick, it wouldn't shock me. Many analysts are mocking age of it. Okay, I already sort of went on that one. Any idea how far away the Patriots are from signing Joe Thuney? I don't think they're getting close. So that's why there's been so many rumors of a trade this weekend. The Patriots could move Joe Thuney, which that's a situation that I certainly would not mind the Patriots doing if they can't reach an agreement, because you can't invest $15 million in Joe Thuney plus another whatever it is, $10 million or whatever in Shaq Mason, and they so desperately need cap room. I don't even know if they have enough cap space to sign Marquise Lee, which they're doing today. But yeah, I think a trade at this point, if they can't reach an agreement with Joe Thuney in the next few hours, then a trade might be coming. Kicker, already sort of addressed that. Sam Sloman and Rodrigo Blankenship are my guys there. How many holes do we have coaching-wise, and what effect will it have next season with Scar gone and Joe Judge gone? I think they'll fill those in from within. It's either going to be Cole Popovich, who's an assistant running backs coach, or Carmen Brasillo, who's the assistant offensive line coach, taking over for Scar. So we'll see which one goes there. And as far as filling in for Joe Judge, the assistant special teams coach will be filling in, I think, in that regard. And then at wide receiver, it would probably either be Mick Lombardi or Jed Fish. It seems like it might be Jed Fish moving over to assistant quarterbacks coach, and then Mick Lombardi going to wide receivers coach. That's what Mike Reese reported, and that sort of seems to make sense with what Jed Fish has done in the past. So once again, we'll kind of have to see how those coaching moves go, but that's sort of what it's looking at right now. Previously, a team carried 58 players on a Sunday. Did that change? If so, what is the new number? I'm actually not sure. I think it's like 56. No, wait. I think it might be a 56-man roster now. I'm not sure what the active roster. I'll have to look into that. I kind of forgot what that is. Would the Patriots trade up for Herbert if he falls in the early teens instead of Tua? Yeah, I think that Herbert would probably be the better trade-up option than Tua, just based on some of the question marks that are surrounding Tua. I know that Tua was the better player in college, but based on size, athleticism, and the lack of medical concerns, I think that Herbert would probably be a more likely trade-up option than Tua. But I still think that the Chargers are taking Herbert at 6. So we'll see if that actually happens. Which player, if he is still there at 23, is a must-have? I'm not sure if I really think there is one. I know that sounds like kind of a cop-out, but I just don't love the options at 23. I think Kenneth Murray would be a good pick there. I know people like Caleb Chason. I don't think that he's a must-have. There probably wouldn't be like a safety or a cornerback. If Javon Kinlaw's there at 23, I think that he would be a must-have. But beyond that, any realistic option, I'm not sure if there really is one at that point. Would you trade 23 and Thuney for Miami's 26, 39, and third-round pick? Yes, but I don't think that's overly realistic. Patriots go safety in the first. Who do you like? Xavier McKinney would probably be the choice. I like him over Grant Delpit. Ashton Davis seems like more of a second-round option, and I really like Jeremy Chin, but I think he's also more of a second-round option. Could you still see Rex Burkhead getting cut to save money? I've never been able to see that, but I know a lot of other people have sort of made that connection. Thoughts on Logan Wilson with the bats? I think he's a really good fit. Seems like he's rising up draft boards. I'm about to have an energy drink right now. Getting a little bit parched. This is the best. Either this, there's a new teal monster. One of these is the best energy drink, but this one's fantastic. The can is a little bit weird, but it's a good energy drink. Is Edelman sad? I think he might sort of like the idea that he's now the face of the franchise. I don't know. I'm sure he misses Tom Brady and Gronk and everything, but I don't know if he's sad. The possibility of no college football next year, there will probably be a lot more players entering the supplemental draft. Do you think Bill Belichick tries to pick up extra picks for the supplemental draft? I guess that would be in line with trading into next year. I guess it just sort of depends on who would become available. But I don't think there would be players that you would have to plan around entering the supplemental draft, because if they were good enough, then they would have entered this year's draft anyway. Realistic expectations for N'Keal Harry next year. I think he'll certainly be a lot better. I don't know, like 800 yards, something like that. Depends on what else the Patriots do at wide receiver. But he'll definitely be better than he was last season. Do you think a late first round teams will offer us their first and a second for 23? I think it would probably take a little bit more than that on the Patriots end. They would probably have to give 23 and maybe a third to make that move. But I don't hate that idea. Do you think Jalen Hurts has a higher floor as a rookie for the Patriots than any other QB in the draft, not including Burrow? Maybe because he can do some other things, but I do like Justin Herbert. So I'm not sure about that, but Joe Burrow is unbelievable. I know that we haven't talked about a lot about him just because he's not on the Patriots' radar whatsoever. His season last season was bonkers insane. Just like absolutely bonkers insane. I hadn't really studied the numbers and looked at them that closely until recently. Completing 76% of your passes with 60 touchdowns and 5,600 yards that's absolutely insane. I feel like that we're almost not talking about Joe Burrow enough, and obviously no one really wants to talk about him in New England because he's not a possibility, but that guy was a stud last season. If the season is canceled, will that count as a year in player's contract? I don't think so, but I'm not sure. How would next year's draft order be determined if the season was canceled? That's a good question as well. I'm not sure if they would just do this one over again or just sort of shuffle it up, but that's a really good question. If Stidham was in this year's class, where would I rank him? Based on what he did in the preseason last season, I would probably rank him right around that Jordan Love mark. I'd still put Burrow, Herbert, and Tua above him, but I think there's a lot of similarities between Stidham and Jordan Love, and the fact that Stidham was able to be so good in training camp in the preseason, I might put him above Jordan Love. What's the chance the Pats pick a wide receiver in the first round? Again, not great, just because I think a lot of those names at the end of the first round, once you get past CeeDee Lamb, Jerry Jeudy, and Henry Ruggs, I think that you can get similar players in the second and third round. So if someone that they really like is still there, if Justin Jefferson or Denzel Mims or someone is still there, but otherwise, I don't think there's a major drop-off, say, between Denzel Mims and Chase Claypool, or, Justin Jefferson, or Lynn Bowden, or Brian Edwards, or any one of those guys. What do we got here? Where did I just go? Am I still here? Yes. All right. Who will have the bigger drop in the draft, if any, of the first round? I don't know. Maybe Tua. Tua could fall. Myers and Stidham seem to have chemistry last preseason. Do you see this translating over to the regular season, or is it just against mediocre preseason defenses? I think they've got serious chemistry. I think that they probably only built that up even more as the season went along. Two rookies last season worked with each other a lot. So I think that with Stidham at quarterback, Jacoby Myers could wind up having a pretty solid second season. Where you stand on Tank for Trevor, not on board things change so much with quarterbacks, and you're seeing that this year more than any other year. After, what was it, 2017, everyone was on board to tank for Justin Herbert, and now he's the third quarterback in this class. Before last season, everyone was talking about tank for Tua, and now he might fall in the first round, and no one saw Joe Burrow coming. So who knows what happens with Trevor Lawrence next season, and who knows who comes along who could potentially pass Trevor Lawrence on draft rankings. So tanking for a quarterback before a college season even begins, it doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I think Trevor Lawrence is going to be a good player, but just so much can happen at that quarterback position, and this year's more proof of that than any other year. What's my best Patriots draft memory? I seem to remember drafts pretty well. Like, I remember where I was when the Vikings took Randy Moss. For some reason, I was young. I was 1998. I was 11, and I was at my dad's work for some reason. We went into Boston for some reason, and the Vikings took Randy Moss. But as far as the Patriots go, it was good for me in 2014 to be at the draft. That was the only year I went to New York for the draft, and that was the year they took Jimmy Garoppolo. So I was able to be like the first Patriots reporter to ever talk to Jimmy Garoppolo. So that was good. Beyond that, I'm not sure if I really have a best Patriots draft memory. Are you a fan of Albert Okwuegbunam for the Pats in the third or fourth round? Do you hear how easily I'm saying that name at this point? Albert Okwuegbunam. I got it down. Now the Patriots just need to draft him because I know how to spell his name too. That's half the battle. I like him. Thoughts on T. Higgins? Reports seem to indicate that he will be falling towards the end of the second or possibly third. I like T. Higgins. I'm usually a measurable guy. I love testing numbers. The fact that like pro days didn't happen this year, like sort of crushed my soul to a certain degree, just because I love 3 cones and 40s and all these numbers so much. And T. Higgins tested very poorly. 6'3", 216, 4'5", 940, 4'5", short shuttle, ugly numbers. But that sort of feels like a player, how everyone said that, Jerry Rice ran like a 4.6 or whatever it was, and Anquan Bolden and DeAndre Hopkins didn't work out that well. I sort of just feel like T. Higgins is going to outperform those testing numbers. Where are we at here? Do you think there will be a tech problem during the draft? Probably just a minor one. Do you think Bill Belichick would actually try to get Deshaun Watson over the next 12 to 18 months? Absolutely, if he's available. Do you think there is a realistic chance that they do not draft a tight end this year again, especially that this year's draft class isn't that good? I'm sorry that I just talked through a burp. That reminds me of a John Mulaney bit. I guess that means that I'm getting old. I don't mind this year's tight end class. I think Cole Kmet's pretty good. I think Chapman's good. I think Okwuegbunam is a rare athlete for his size. I think that either one of the Bryants is pretty decent. Everyone knows that I love Dalton Keene late in the draft, so I'm not sure if I totally agree with the assessment that this is a poor tight end class. I know that there's supposed to be a couple better tight ends potentially at the top of next year's class, but I would still take a tight end. I do think it's possible the Patriots don't, just because that's the way that they roll sometimes. If their player's not there, then they won't take one. Any running back Patriots might pick late in the draft, I can show you. I like A.J. Dillon, the local guy from BC. Beyond that, Baylor's JaMychal Hasty. I think that he would be a good fit potentially as a third down back. There's some like wide receiver running back hybrids like Antonio Gibson out of Memphis, Joe Reed out of Virginia that I think the Patriots could be interested in. I think they would probably be aiming more towards the pass catching back rather than, the thumpers in the middle. Do you remember the Brady draft pick? No, I don't. I was definitely watching it, but no. For some reason, I remember like the Brandon Dederick pick though. That's why I said that I have a pretty good memory when it comes to drafts, because I remember where I was when they took Brandon Dederick, which is dumb. Like that should, if anything should be my memory, that should be gone. But somehow that's still there. Would the Pats ever consider trading Gilmore since his contract is up? I've been asked about this a lot. I'm not on board with the Gilmore trade. It wouldn't free up enough salary cap space. Chances Tooney gets traded today, I would say over 50%. Is Thaddeus Moss just a bad football player? Is he ranked so low by analysts? He seemed pretty damn good in the national championship game. The problem there, to some degree, is he didn't test at the combine, so he's got a mark there that you don't know what his 40 is. The other problem is that he has an injury, so that's sort of another mark on him. And then also, he was only a one-year wonder, had 47 catches for 570 yards and 4 touchdowns last year. Those are good numbers, but it was the only year that he produced. And then he's also undersized. He's what? He's not even 6'2", 250 pounds. So that's a lot of marks against him, and that's why he's regarded as, sort of a mid to late round pick. This could be my final question, then I will get out of here. Thank you guys so much again for watching this. I like doing this with you guys. Hopefully we can do some more of this stuff now that even the draft is wrapping up. But this is sort of a fun way to connect with everyone and continue to kind of crank out this content while people are sort of craving it. So once again, I will just say to, follow me on Twitter at Doug Kide. I'm sure all of you guys are probably already doing that, or else you wouldn't know about this. Keep it on NESN.com for all of your Patriots coverage of the draft, because Zach and I will be cranking out the content there, as well as our desk will be on top of things as well. And subscribe to the NESN Patriots podcast. We did a mock draft in our last episode, so if you guys wanted to listen to that before the draft happens, certainly do that. And then also just subscribe to this channel, because I will probably be doing more of this stuff. So I'll pick a final question here. Well, first of all, okay, yes. Marcus Stanwell says you aren't a Pats fan if you don't randomly remember Dax Swanson. Dax Swanson was an undrafted legend. Let's see. This is... could the fact that we've continuous played into February over the last 4 to 5 years be a reason our drafts have been pretty poor, not as much time to scout? No, but it could play a factor, because Bill Belichick is so heavily invested in the season, Nick Caserio is so heavily invested in the season. I trust the Patriots scouts, though, to know what they're doing. Monty Ossenfort, Dave Ziegler on the pro side. Those are smart guys. So I don't think that it's made a major impact, but I do think that this has given the Patriots more time to look at the draft. And that's the higher-ups, the guys, like I said, like Bill Belichick and Nick Caserio. So we'll see how the Patriots do in the draft. We'll see how a few years down the line, how this all goes. But no, I don't think that plays a major role. It's certainly given me more time to look at the draft. I know this draft class better than really most years in the past. I know most of these names that we're talking about. I've watched most of these names. I know their pro day and combine numbers and all that good stuff. But as far as the Patriots go, I don't know. Maybe they're the same way. But once again, thanks for watching. And maybe we'll do this after the draft. Maybe I'll talk about some of the players.